Welcome back to the Law&Crime Network. My name is Stephanie L. Willis, and I will be with you for the remainder of the afternoon. What you just saw was victim impact statement from Diane Dietrich, who is Douglas Dietrich's mother. She provided a victim impact statement in the Wisconsin versus George Burch matter. If you will remember, a jury in Wisconsin found George Burch guilty of first-degree intentional homicide after a 2-week trial in the 2016 murder of Nicole Vanderheiden. Douglas Dietrich, her boyfriend, was originally brought in for questioning, but later Mr. Burch implicated him, and that's when the tides of this investigation changed. And luckily, due to a Fitbit, we were able to determine that Douglas Dietrich was not, in fact, the individual. We will take you back live into the courtroom as they are reading a statement from Douglas Dietrich, and we don't want you to miss a thing.
Tell him what George Burch did to his mommy.
We seem to be having some technical difficulties. We just saw, or we were seeing live in the courtroom, the defense last speaking on behalf of Mr. George Burch in his sentencing hearing. As soon as just about to start, we have Brian Wagner with us here this afternoon. And Brian, what do you think essentially about Mr. Burch not saying anything? Is that okay? Oh, well, you know what? I'm sorry, Brian, to do this, but we're back in the courtroom now, so we'll take you there not live.
The family go through the tragedy. It was very difficult.
Welcome back to Law&Crime. We just heard live from the courtroom that George Burch will serve life without the possibility of parole in the murder of Nicole Vanderheiden. We still have Brian Wagner with us this afternoon. Brian, what are you thinking about this? I know that we actually had to sit through a lot of what the judge had to say, even after hearing the victim impact statement. Do you think not hearing from Mr. Burch made a difference at all in his decision, in the judge's decision?
I think to some extent it did. First, in terms of Mr. Burch, if he wasn't going to say anything that would help his case, then he shouldn't say anything. Right. Because sometimes saying the wrong thing is worse than saying nothing. But what I really found interesting was what these sentencings come down to is whether or not you think the defendant, in this case Mr. Burch, is ever going to be able to be rehabilitated. And that's what the defense kind of hit on. What they talked about was, look, people change, circumstances change. We're talking about 25 years from now. Maybe Mr. Burch will be worthy of parole that time. If he's not, the parole board will deny it. But if you just think, I'm not even going to give you the opportunity, then you're basically signing his death warrant, which is what the judge ultimately did. And we could talk about some of the issues that the judge had in terms of his sentencing statement as well. Right, and you hit the nail right on the head. I actually do want to talk about that, especially since while we were off air, we were discussing how there may be some, potential issues on appeal. The judge specifically was stating during his, I guess, while he was rendering the decision or the sentence, that you could have, and I'm paraphrasing, but you could have decided to say, I'm guilty of this crime, instead of taking this case to trial and bringing everybody through this. This is not something that we hear often from a judge. What do you think about that, and what are the possible effects from the judge's statement, if any? So I'm shocked, because everyone has a constitutional right to a trial by a jury, and for the state, the prosecution, the people, to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's your constitutional right. You cannot be penalized for exercising that constitutional right, just like you cannot be penalized for not testifying on your own behalf. So for the judge to essentially say that there's a trial penalty and that you don't deserve parole because you weren't, in his words, man enough to stand up and say, you're right, I did it, that creates an appellate issue. In reality, though, the appellate issue is just in terms of the sentencing. It's not going to set aside the verdict.
No, it's not.
So it might be a issue without any real difference. And then the other issue is that he started talking about the death penalty.
Yeah.
It's not a death penalty state.
No, it's not. That really boggled me a little bit. And it just, while we were off air watching this, it kind of made us think, like, where's this judge going? We do know that it's not a death penalty state. Why even bring that up? Is that more so to just let me just say this. It seemed like he took this case, in my opinion, a little personally. And as a judge, you're really not supposed to. Am I correct?
I mean, I think judges do take these things personal.
Right.
I mean, no one won today.
No.
Right? Birch's life is over. Van Helen's life is over. The family is going to be forever affected. This is not a happy day. And the judge, truly, I think at his heart, took this case very seriously and wants that to be clear. But the problem is that there's ways to say that this is a serious case and deserves serious time without the possibility of parole, without invoking things that have nothing to do with it, trial penalty, a death penalty, because that has no place in this case.
No, it doesn't. It does not at all. We did hear that the defense presented, I guess, some mitigating factors that the judge actually alluded to, the fact that, you know, he had been adopted, that the fact that he does have 3 children that actually still, you know, I believe the judge said they still love him. Why present those mitigating factors during the sentencing hearing?
Because when you are the defense attorney for a client that's about to be sentenced,
right,
you want the judge to understand that this act that he stands or she stands convicted of is not the person's character in its whole. People are complicated. People have good days, bad days. People have good actions and bad actions. Even the most terrible, guilty person in the world can help a little old lady cross the street one day.
Very true.
Right? So you want to make sure that they understand, the judge, and when they sentence the client, that they understand that it's a complete person and you shouldn't just look at this one act. Look at the person in their entirety. And that's what the defense was trying to do.
Right. We also do know that there was a PSI, which is a pre-sentence investigation. Explain that to our viewers so that they know exactly what that is.
So the standard operating procedure is after someone's convicted, the Department of Probation will interview the person convicted as well as sometimes victims and witnesses to a crime, so that the Department of Probation can then make a report to the judge that he or she will rely on in sentencing. In this case, the PSI included his 5 previous convictions, his probation violations, his warrants that were previously ordered, all those things that allow the judge to determine whether or not this person should be or should not be eligible for parole.
Right. Well, you know, as I just stated, George Burch, Wisconsin versus George Burch, we did have sentencing in this. He will serve life without the possibility of parole, ladies and gentlemen. So that case has come to its conclusion. George Burch will serve life without the possibility of parole in the murder of Nicole Vanderheiden. What we do want to do is bring you back to the William Riley Gaul case. As we do know, we've been following this case in its entirety. This case is involving a 19-year-old. He's currently 19 years old, excuse me, at this moment. This is the murder trial of a standout high school football player. He was in college, from Tennessee. The prosecutors are saying that William Riley Gaul, 18, shot and killed his former girlfriend, Emma Walker, who was 16 at the time. Let's discuss, like, this. Let's talk about this case a little bit. We do know that the defense here, during their opening statements, they also brought up the fact that the defendant pled guilty to shooting actually into the house, but their defense is that he did not do it with the intent to kill Emma Walker. Explain how that's that's a good, I guess, a good defense for this individual.
Juries have a hard time understanding why someone would admit to something, but not everything. And that's what you want to do as a defense attorney, say, there's no chance we could beat the charge that you weren't the shooter. We just can't win that. So how can we lessen your culpability? Well, you didn't mean to kill her. And whether or not the jury buys that or whether or not the defense is able to prevail, it's still a good strategy at this point.
Okay. Well, we're going to take you back live into the courtroom in the William Riley Gaul matter. Remember, William is charged with the murder of his ex-girlfriend, Emma Walker. So we're taking you back live into the courtroom right now. Welcome back to the Law&Crime Network. My name is Stephanie L. Willis, and I'm still here with you. And so is Mr. Brian Wagner. We are still covering the William Riley Gaul matter. They are taking a 5-minute break. If you will recall, we just want to remind our viewers who are just joining us again that William Riley Gaul is charged with the murder of his ex-girlfriend, Emma Walker. He's charged with shooting her from the outside of her home, and it's premeditated murder. That's what the prosecution is claiming in this case. Now, the defense, on the other hand, is claiming the opposite. They are claiming that yes, he did shoot into the house, but that it was not premeditated. That he did not intend to actually kill her. What we're going to do right now, though, we're going to take you to allow you to see a clip from Alex McCarthy. Alex McCarthy took the stand yesterday and was the individual who actually recorded, in cooperation with the police, who actually recorded the defendant, William Riley Gaul. So we want you to take a look at that during this 5-minute break, and then we'll discuss it. Brian and I will discuss it when we get back. Welcome back to Law and Crime Live. We just saw a video of an actual video of William Riley Gaul. This video was taken by a friend of his who was cooperating with the police and did some type of video of Mr. Gaul while he was having a conversation with his friends. Brian, thank you so much for still being with us this afternoon. I know that we don't have you for that much longer, but one of the things that I found peculiar was that he was suggesting to his friends that they pretend that they were drunk or that they were high so that the police officers, in essence, really couldn't elicit any kind of information from them. Let's discuss that, break that down, and why is that not maybe like a witness tampering or an obstruction?
And that's what we talked about.
Right.
The issue is, and we don't know all the details of how that video came to be, but did the police tell the friends to initiate the conversation or not? Because that's going to be an entrapment defense. And so sometimes a prosecutor won't charge something just because it's a cleaner case, a cleaner indictment, without messing it up with unneeded details. But on the other hand, it does show a consciousness of guilt, right? Like that he knew he was guilty, so much so that he was telling people to lie for him. And since that's the only purpose of entering those charges, they're still able to get to that same area by admitting the video and admitting the testimony. So really the entrapment charge wouldn't cause any more or less jail time, and you can't have a tampering with witness charge without the underlying crime. So it's really, I guess, of no importance to the prosecution.
Great explanation. We do know that William Riley Gaul is charged with first-degree murder. He's charged with stalking, theft of property, hiding the gun, reckless endangerment, which was the firing the gun into the habitation, which he pled guilty for before the actual trial, which we're going to get into a little bit. And then he's also charged with employing a firearm during a dangerous felony and killing during an aggravated child abuse. Just to provide a little bit of a summary for our viewers that are just joining us, William Riley Gaul, who is now 19, is charged with the murder, with premeditated murder for shooting and killing his former girlfriend, Emma Walker, who was 16 at the time. And this is out of Tennessee in Knox County. So let's talk about this reckless endangerment. He pled guilty to this charge. Briefly explain to us, before we go back into the courtroom, why that's a little bit absurd.
It's interesting, in New York, the jurisdiction we're in, you would not be allowed to plead guilty to one of the lesser includeds and continue with the trial unless the prosecution allowed it. But even if the prosecution allowed it, you certainly wouldn't be able to discuss a guilty plea that you already entered in your opening statements. You might be able to concede that, yes, he did this, but you wouldn't be able to say he's already admitted guilt. So that's the interesting part.
Does this help, or does this help the defense, or maybe just put a little bit of a kink in there in the case a little bit?
You have to figure it helps the defense, because they're trying to mitigate their culpability. They're mitigating what they actually did by admitting to something, but denying. Sorry, you admit what you can't deny, you deny what you can't admit. That's what they've done in this case.
Well, Brian, I want to thank you so much for staying with us this evening, and we're still going to continue live in William Riley Gaul matter, but we wanted to thank Brian Wagner for being with us this afternoon, and we hope you come back and join us on the Law and Crime Network. Thank you so much. And we're going to continue live into the William Riley Gaul matter. William Riley Gaul is 19 years old, in charge of the premeditated murder of his girlfriend, or ex-girlfriend, excuse me, Emma Walker, and we're taking you back live into the courtroom now.